Hello, Sunday school teachers. The resurrection of Lazarus, a great story this weekend, really a turning point in the ministry of Jesus. As we look at the Sunday school curriculum next week, we're going to go back to the Old Testament. This is really a good pre Lent story. This leads right into Jesus' crucifixion. After he raises Lazarus from the dead, there is no going back. What's different about this miracle? I mean, he's raised people from the dead before, but this happened close to Jerusalem. A lot of the other miracles were done in the Galilee area, kind of in the sticks, if you will. But this one is right under the noses of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, and it's bound to get people's attention. When a guy has been in the grave several days and everybody knows he's dead, and then all of a sudden he's walking around like nothing happened, there's no going back. There's a sense of urgency now among Jesus's opponents to put him away. But that's some of the context here. It is in many ways kind of a culmination of Jesus's ministry. So let's delve into it. So first of all, Lazarus and his sisters, we know them from other stories. The famous story of Mary and Martha, and how Martha was all busy and Mary did the right thing by sitting at the feet of Jesus. These people, we don't know like much about their background, but they were very close to Jesus. And when Jesus would come to Jerusalem, which wasn't as often as people might think. I think we sometimes get this impression that Jerusalem is Jesus's home base, because that's the big city. That, of course, is where the events of Holy Week occurred. But for the most part, Jesus was up in Galilee. He would come down to Jerusalem for holidays to partake in festivals. And apparently, when he would come to Jerusalem, yeah, and it wasn't just Jesus, when these festivals would happen, the city would swell in size and people needed places to stay. And Bethany is just outside of Jerusalem. It's across a valley and up some hills, and there's Bethany, and that's where Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived. And apparently, when Jesus would come to Jerusalem, he would stay with his friends, two sisters and a brother who apparently are living in the same area, if not the same house. It appears that they shared a residence. Anyway, Lazarus dies, and Jesus got word ahead of time that he was sick. But Jesus knowingly sat on that news and waited for Lazarus to die because he had bigger plans for Lazarus. And this is already a helpful application for us. How often do we pray and God can do something? He's sovereign. He can do something, but he doesn't do what we think he should do. He makes us wait. And in the end, he will answer all of our prayers in the best possible way with the best possible things. So you can pray knowing that God will answer and will in his time give you the best. And how when Lazarus is dead, how in the world did anyone think like Jesus is still going to do what's best here? But oh, just wait, right? So Jesus, as he's coming to Bethany, and by the way, his disciples didn't want him to be coming because they knew the kind of danger that he would face in Jerusalem. But they go with him, and immediately he encounters Martha, who is wondering, what's up here? We told you that our brother was dying, and you didn't come. And now, just so you know, Jesus, if you had been here, our brother would not have died. And they're not wrong. If Jesus had been there, he could have done something about it, right? If only you had been here. So here's another application. Like, you can tell God what's on your mind. You can tell Jesus what's on your mind. And then we have this fascinating exchange where Jesus is looking for Martha to give a profession of faith, for her to, let me pull out my Bible here. John chapter 11 here, Jesus says, your brother will rise again. So we have this truth here of the resurrection, which not every Jew believed in the resurrection. I think most did, but the Sadducees famously said, yeah, that once you die, that's it. And so Jesus here clearly shows that there is such a thing as the resurrection. And Martha is saying, yeah, I know, on the last day. So really the same hope that we have. And I hope all too often we don't really profess loud enough, because we're always talking about when someone dies how they're in heaven, which is great and everything, but let's please remember what Martha knows. What we're looking forward to is the day of the resurrection. And so she's looking forward to that, and she says to Jesus, yeah, I know, I will see him again. So she already has some comfort to begin with. And then Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who believes in me shall never die. Just a wonderful passage. I've read at every funeral I've ever officiated, and something very helpful to remember. But then comes the key question. Jesus looks at Martha and says, do you believe this? And she says, yes, Lord, I believe you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. Interesting way to say it, right? Who is coming into the world. Like Martha is aware that he's inaugurated something, he's begun something, but he hasn't finished it. He hasn't completed what he came to do. You are coming into the world. Instead of you came or you will come, it's you are coming, which is still the case for what it's worth. He still is the Son of God who is coming into the world. What's interesting about this is that it has reversed a pattern that John has established in his gospel to this point. John has recorded a number of miracles, starting with the wedding at Cana in John chapter 2. That's the first miracle Jesus did, turning water into wine. John tells us after all these miracles, there's like 6 or 7 of them that he lists throughout the gospel. And at the end of it, as kind of a summary, he explains the effect that miracle had. And the effect is belief. When people see Jesus do miracles, they believe that he is the Son of God who is coming into the world, the one who is the resurrection and the life. And not everybody believes. Some people see the miracles and don't believe, but some do. Starting again with that first one, we read that his disciples then believed. Not many people even saw that miracle, but a handful did, and they believed that he was the Son of God, the Messiah, come into the world. And so each of these miracles, Jesus did a miracle, people believe. Jesus did a miracle, people believe. Jesus did a miracle, people believe. And now here, towards the end of the Gospel of John, we get belief first. It's reversed. Martha says, yes, I believe. And then what do we get? A miracle. Jesus goes to the tomb of Lazarus. And we have this fascinating section where Jesus weeps. Shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. The Greek there is so fascinating. It's like he's disturbed. Upset doesn't begin to describe. And even the section that talks about how he is approaching the tomb, it's the same section that a Greek author uses to describe the stallion going into war. The snorting of the horse it's about ready. Picture that horse just getting ready to be let loose on the reins and go into an intense battle. That's the description of Jesus as he goes to the tomb of Lazarus. He is deeply moved, deeply disturbed, because this is not how it should be. There should be no death. There should be no tears. This shouldn't be. And we're going to do something about it now. We're going to fix things. Right here at the tomb of Lazarus, we're going to see that reversal of death begin to take shape. And Jesus calls out to Lazarus and he says, hey, Lazarus, make a decision for me whether you want to come out or not. Now, this is important when it comes to the resurrection and when it comes to the faith that we have. Jesus calls and says, Lazarus, come out of the tomb. Dead people can't come out of a tomb until Jesus speaks to them. And it's the same way with our faith. We cannot make a decision to follow Jesus. We cannot come to faith of our own reason or strength until Jesus calls to us. The word comes to us. Now, the word can be resisted. It is theoretically possible for Lazarus in the tomb to hear this, to come back to life, and then to roll over. There's a musician you probably haven't heard of named Nick Cave, Australian rocker, kind of 80s, 90s alternative kind of guy. He has this song called Dig Lazarus Dig, and it's like from the perspective of like Lazarus is mad that he got raised from the dead. He would prefer to have not been brought back to this ugly fallen world. And with all due respect to Nick Cave, my goodness, if that's what Lazarus really wanted, he could have. He could have said, no thanks. I'm going to roll over back to the grave here. I was doing just fine. Thank you very much. But Jesus' call wakes him from the dead, and Lazarus comes out of the tomb. This is how it will be for us on the last day, whether we are in a tomb or whether we're in some of the lowly bodies that we are now. We will hear the voice of Jesus, and in faith, because Jesus has given us the means to have faith, we will respond by coming out of the tomb or approaching Jesus. But it starts with Him, is the key point. His word raises the dead. His word calls us from sin to grace. His word brings us from a life of death to a life of life. All right, so then Jesus calls Lazarus from the dead, much to the surprise of everybody, because he had been in that grave a number of days at this point, past the expiration date. there was a thought in Hebrew religious beliefs at this time that the soul kind of hangs around for a few days anyway, which is interesting because now we know like people are clinically dead and we can bring them back, right? You get that EKG or whatever, you get that defibrillator going and the heart starts up and the breath comes back and someone who is clinically dead is alive again. The Hebrews kind of had that kind of built into their belief system that, yeah, the soul is kind of hanging around for a little bit here, but there does come a point, and I forget if it's how many days it was, but Lazarus has passed those appointed number of days, so there was a thinking here that like you can't bring him back. And Jesus had, again, brought some people back from the dead, but never after this many days, this amount of time. So this is something different. This is something remarkable that does point ahead to a last day resurrection. And this is helpful back to our point about the reversal here of the order of things. Miracle and then belief. That was the way it was. Now, the way it is, belief and then miracle. So Martha has started a new trend here. She believes, and then she sees the miracle. This is how it is for us as well. We believe. We believe in the resurrection of the body and the life everlasting. We've never seen a guy come out of a tomb after a number of days, but we say every time we confess that creed, we believe. And now with Martha, the belief in the miracle, we had a pretty close kind of, there wasn't much of a gap there in the time between her profession of belief and the actual miracle. For us, it's longer. I get it. It's a lot longer. But this is still the order of things. We believe and we will see a miracle. We will see the dead raised. And it's already begun with the resurrection of Lazarus, and the resurrection of Jesus ultimately is what inaugurates this fullness of understanding that this day is coming. The final thought I had briefly, fascinating that when he comes out, he's wearing grave clothes, which is good. He's not buck naked. That's nice. But he's wearing grave clothes. He's draped in these clothes. He's wrapped up. The poor guy is essentially a mummy. And Jesus' command is, help him out here. I find this to be really significant in terms of our calling as Christians right now. Jesus has risen from the dead. He has already called out the victory of life over death. And yet, the grave clothes are still hanging around this world, the vestiges of death. Our calling as Christians is to remove those grave clothes and to reveal the life that is here right now, even now, in Jesus Christ. So how do you remove those grave clothes around the world around you? Well, you love people, you take care of people, you minister to the sick, you minister to the dying, you minister to the grieving. You take care of the creation. You plant trees. You clear out debris and rubble. You beautify things. You do art. You make music. You do creative endeavors. This is all promoting life, and that's what our calling is as Christians. We are agents of life because we follow one who has risen from the dead. So we don't walk around as if we are defeated, even though death continues, yes, I know, continues to hound us every minute of every waking hour. But our calling is to be agents of life and remove those grave clothes and fight death, because we know the victory is ours and the victory is Jesus's, but he has given us a role in this victory. He has given us a job to do, which is to remove those grave clothes. So that's my final takeaway from the story, which again culminates ultimately in Jesus' own death and resurrection. This story leads on a straight path to that. And we will get there. The Lenten season is coming up in just a few weeks now. Ash Wednesday is March 2nd. You know, Lent means spring. I'm looking forward to it this year, looking forward to those Wednesday night Lent services and Holy Week and all that stuff's just ahead. But let's take some time to celebrate Jesus' miracle with Lazarus as we wait for that season of the church year. Finally, our quick summary is what does the story give us? What takeaways? What does the story tell us about God and his tender mercies? That he is willing to do something about death, that not always on our schedule and in our time and the way we want, but God has chosen to send Jesus to come into the world and lament, and not just lament, but do something about the curse of death. Jesus was deeply moved in spirit, and he did something about it. Let's not forget that. God in his mercies has done something about the enemies that we face. What does the story tell us about who we are as God's people and our identity as the royal priesthood of believers? We are the ones who are friends of Jesus. Lazarus was his friend. Didn't look like that all that much when Jesus didn't hurry to Lazarus' bedside when he was dying. I get that. But Jesus is our friend. We are friends of God through Jesus, and he is willing to do whatever it takes in order to bring us back from all the death and sin and hatred and anger in the world that afflicts us. And what does the story tell us about how to live as God's people? Well, hey, this is the removing the grave clothes again. It is our job to remove the grave clothes. Jesus has already done the hard work, but we got a little task in front of us every day. So as you remove the grave clothes with your Sunday school kids this weekend, may God bless your lessons.